Broadcasting from Washington, D.C., this is Insider's Guide to Energy.
This week on Insider's Guide to Energy, we're going to try something a little bit different. We've brought our friend over from Redefining Energy to have a conversation. And Jeff and I, Laurent, we go all over the place. I hope you enjoy this conversation. It goes everywhere from COP to carbon capture to the Cybertruck. It's a great episode. Jeff, why don't you go ahead and just kick us off?
Well, Chris, I'm thrilled today to have Laurent Segalin from the Redefining Energy podcast. He's a decades-long energy professional and outspoken thought leader from across the pond. So really excited to have his perspective today to balance out what's been a more American perspective, I would say. For me, I know, Chris, you've had more experience across the pond.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to having Laurent here. He and I have gone back and forth on text for probably a couple of years now. If I step out of line with something he doesn't like, I quickly get a DM from him saying, "Hey, why was this person on here? Why are you giving this person a voice to say this or that? Or you're absolutely wrong with what you just said, Chris." So I find him one of the shyest Europeans I know, and it's an honor to have him on the program today. So Jeff, bring Laurent on and see where we go.
I'm blushing. Thank you guys for having me. Yeah, let's have a good conversation.
What we're going to try to do today is run through some of those hot button issues and give quick takes. Are these overhyped, underhyped, appropriately hyped? I know we can't get you to try to constrain you too much. I do want to be clear, though. We're not trying to say, will it work or will it not work? It's really, or is it good or is it bad? We're really trying to understand, is it over or under hyped? And that can be subjective. And let's have fun with it.
Look, I'd like to start with a story. And it's the story of the six blind men. I don't know if you know it, but I'm going to tell it anyway. So there are six blind men who come and they start touching because they can see. And the first one said, "This is a tree." The second one say, "No, this is a wall." The third one is, "This is a snake, the spear, a fan, a rope." And in fact, they're all wrong because they're touching an elephant, and one is touching his leg, the other one's touching his tusk or his trump, and So when we talk about energy, sometimes we are those blind men, and we lack the big picture. And of course, you need to go back to the forefathers of thinking about energy, like Daniel Yergin, and it's always good. Because you see all those prediction or innovation and so on, and at the end of the day, it's really about scale. And in my personal opinion, there's been one technology per decade who made it, and the rest was just background noise. And that would have been in the 80s, the CCGTs, probably 70s, the nuclear, the 90s would be wind, the 2000 would be solar, and last decade, the batteries. And that's it. These are my principles, and then a lot of weird noise around it.
If every 10 years we get one new technology, and you've kind of covered the ones where we're at today. I think solar and wind are the prevalent investments today. Storage is I don't know, are we in the 10 years or at the beginning of the 10 years for storage?
So it takes 10 years to for a technology to reach full maturity. That's the 10 years. And then the next 10 years, the rollout is pretty crazy. And I guess it's an S curve. We are into, if you take wind, the global installation the past 3 or 4 years have started to plateau. I mean, it's still a lot. It's 100 gigawatts, still a lot, but it's not much growth there. Whereas solar, we're really in the steepest part of the S curve. So we had 100 gig and then 200 gig, and the last year like 400 gig, but I'm not sure we can go to 800 gig. But it's pretty phenomenal. Now, when it comes to batteries, there's a lot. The interesting thing is the chemistries are still working and changing very fast. We had until 2018, we had everything was cobalt. So then after the backlash was, what about the Congo? What about those little children and blah, blah, blah? Guess what? They removed the cobalt from from the batteries, and then after it was all nickel. Oh, nickel, nickel. Now we're removing nickel, so it's lithium ferrophosphate, LFP. LFP. We're running out of lithium. There's not enough lithium. Everybody invests in lithium, and kaboom! Last year, lithium went down 80%. And guess what? Now they're coming with sodium. So, you know, uh, this is the decade where really people are, searching for the perfect combination, and the innovation which are happening are absolutely fascinating. And I'm investing in batteries. I can tell you, every 6 months I have to reset a lot of things. The thing is, I'm not writing reports. I'm writing checks. So you're a bit more cautious.
Let's talk about batteries on wheels,
Ah,
electric vehicles. This is an area where there is a lot of hype, and to some extent, that's been proven out. I'm looking at some numbers here that say in 2023, middle of last year, we had 16% of new light-duty vehicle fleets as electric. That sounds very high to me. As a percentage of the overall fleet, I think we're still in single digits in the 3 to 5% range. IEA has predictions that globally 30% of the light duty vehicle fleet will be electric by 2040. Do you buy this trajectory? Is the EV growth rate and transition overhyped or underhyped?
I would say it depends where, because you have different markets. You've got China, you've got Europe, you've got the US, and you've got various other parts of the world, and the story is very different and could even go in different ways. Now we need to roll back, because I think a lot of people think it's for the environment, and my personal opinion, it's not. It's about energy security, and it's about technology dominance. Now, if you look at China, now they need to import 15 million barrels of oil per day. A lot of it passes in front of the Fifth Fleet in Singapore. It's pretty easy to blockade China's import of petroleum. And if you read Daniel Yergin, it's the oil embargo on Japan who triggered the war, triggered Pearl Harbor 6 months later. My understanding is the Chinese feel very insecure in terms of energy security, having to import all that oil. And that's one of the reasons they pushed very hard the development of EVs. And now it's really proving a success. If you look at Europe, we are a bit in the same category, considering we need to import 80% of our oil. Whereas in the US, you're drowning in oil. And apparently the legacy automakers are, paying lip service to EVs, but they probably don't know how to do them. So they like to, probably kick the can down the road and hoping that Tesla does not exist. But that's what I'm thinking.
You're referencing kind of the world energy map and security and Daniel, your concepts. Energy security is interesting. One of the things that I see as potentially hype or potentially going after is this whole hydrogen thing going on right now. Talked about all this oil going one way or the other. In the US, you call us to wash in hydrocarbons. I'd say we probably are in natural gas very, very high, less so maybe in traditional oil, but we can get to oil however we get it. But what about hydrogen? Everybody's rushing. There's bills and big centers being built and billions and trillions being lined up to go towards hydrogen. What do you think of that?
Well, I think it's a scam of epic proportion. I think that everybody who wants to invest in hydrogen, I'm willing to take a trade against them and short whatever they invest into. That's as simple as it gets. Ask for my address, we'll organize the trade, and I'm going to make a lot of money. And it's not because the head of Nikola is in jail. But hydrogen, they have touted hydrogen for transportation. It's not going to work. For heating, it's not going to work. Hydrogen, if you use it as energy, it doesn't work. It's just too expensive. $1 per kilo equals $9 per MMBTU. Gas is at $3 per MMBTU. And that's $1 per kilo. If you want to make it green and everything, you can't do it before $5 per kilo. So $5 per kilo, that's $45 per MMBTU. That's insane. You want to kill your industry, use hydrogen. That's it, period. Now, of course, we're going to use it for ammonia. We're going to use it for a few other stuff. Even steel, I talked to my friends at the biggest non-Chinese steel company. And I said, oh, do you want to put hydrogens? Yeah, I mean, give me hydrogen at $1 per kilo. I can use it in my furnaces. But, all the position I have is $5 per kilo. So, okay, maybe in the US they give you $3 per kilo, but in Europe, the bill spread is just too big. No, that's it. It's just too expensive.
Chris, do you have a take on hydrogen since you brought it up?
I'm surprised you're saying, $3 a kilo. I think Europe's probably about 12 a kilo right now. I think that the initial targets when everybody was hyping it was 1, and then everyone's moved to 2 or 3 is where they're hoping it will get to. I think there's a lot of infrastructure getting put in place to sell the electrolyzers and get the businesses there. So spent a good bit of time doing hydrogen focus in Germany recently. And the auto industry may be changing. China's doing a lot of EVs and producing lots of cars. And there's regions of Germany that really want to make a lot of hardware and electrolyzers and pieces like that. But there are a lot of people making big bets that hydrogen prices are going to come down and they're going to mandate it in Europe. I think that's the difference between the US and Europe. Although the US is just with the IRA putting billions into building hydrogen centers. There's one big one going into Houston now.
The guys who produce the kit, they want some people to buy them. That's fine. That's fine. But I've been to the hydrogen conferences and I saw Michael Liebreich delivering a world-class speech for 20 minutes without notes in front of 2,000 engineers trying to sell their pumps and electrolyzer and various systems. I didn't see a lot of customers. I see a lot of sellers. And generally, when I go to conferences, I like to see a good balance between the two of them. So yeah, it's pushed by the people who want to sell kits or want to get some subsidies. That's fair, but that doesn't create a market.
Force the issue though. I mean, in Europe, it's becoming policy, right? They're really pushing for Fit for 55. I mean, hydrogen is part of a lot of government policy.
Yeah, it's bullshit. Bullshit. Look, I know the lobbyists. I know their name. They are bozos. That's the only thing I want to say. A lot of things have been pushed by the gas industry. They are trying to keep their assets alive and pretend that you can put hydrogen in the gas pipes and everything is going to be okay. But it just doesn't work. It's an industry who lives and dies by burning molecule. And okay, gas, you can't do gas anymore, or you won't do gas anymore, so you're going to do hydrogen. Everything is going to be okay. No, it's not going to be okay. But again, that's my opinion, but I'm willing to trade. Send me any of your lobbyists, any guy, you put any report on anything. Okay, guy, we go to a lawyer, we write a swap. Boom. See you in 5 years' time.
I like this, the hydrogen short. I can't really, it's hard to disagree but on both sides. I started my career in hydrogen, actually, in fuel cells for forklifts and for retrofitting vehicles to run on gasoline, but then do onboard fuel reforming to turn it into hydrogen for a fuel cell powertrain. That was, coming up on 20 years ago. So I have an inherent negative bias, generally know hydrogen as the fuel of the future and always will be, sharing that crown with fusion. But I have to say I'm pretty skeptical. But Laurent, I like the commanding heights frame. The Jürgen lens on hydrogen isn't actually about the customers. It's about national policy. It's about moving away from fossil fuels. And this is very clearly a government strategic push rather than a customer pull. And that may be important, not because it's maybe the best option, but because there's other geopolitical strategic importance. And I do think we're going to see some interesting niche markets come out around hydrogen. You mentioned steel, green ammonia. So I'm optimistic on a few of those, but broadly, hard to argue that it's not overhyped.
Good. And look, if people want to know more, there is this excellent group of scientists called the Hydrogen Science Coalition. They have a wonderful website, Paul Martin, David Sebon, Tom Baxter, and so on. And everything, what I say in 3 minutes, you can read hours and hours, and you get all the industrial calculation, everything, why it's not going to work. So I say it, if any investment bankers listen to this, if you invest in hydrogen without first looking into the Hydrogen Science Coalition, you should be fired. You don't deserve your job. Okay? That's it.
Wrong words.
Hydrogen, because I think Laurent's made his point. I've shared what I thought. Jeff, you have. So did you want to go back to EVs? I think we brushed over those, and there's a huge amount of noise around EVs these days.
I'm an EV optimist, I will say, and I really appreciate the geopolitical framing because I think most of the debate and discussion in the US tends to center around very consumer-centric perspectives of, oh, yes, but what about range anxiety? Or what about 0 to 60? Or what about this or that model that's coming out? Or is there a 3-row SUV EV model that meets the American demand for space and range? So I think that's a very consumer-centric discussion. And I appreciate the national geopolitical discussion, which is actually the reason why we're shifting is to get off oil. And I think we're seeing that definitely in the US, led by California as usual. So I'm optimistic, actually, that we're going to see very substantial new market penetration of electric vehicles, that we're going to see that across commercial fleets, long haul trucking, and the bumps in the road that we've seen over the last couple of years, particularly you mentioned it earlier, Laurent, around battery prices and commodity prices. I think we're starting to see that level out, and that those are growing pains. There's billions and billions of dollars being poured into US domestic battery manufacturing that I think is going to stabilize the supply chain. And I think that the huge amount of investment coming through the IRA will really catalyze growth in the next decade, really, of EV growth. So I'm on the hype train for EVs broadly, and optimistic for that to be one of the next major technologies of this coming decade.
Okay, first of all, I'm a Elon fan. Always have been, always will be. Whatever shit he does, and he does a lot. I'm I'm a total fan. Because without him, we still be talking about hydrogen cars and that's the future and so on. I mean, I kept this McKinsey report from 2012. 2012, the future of the automotive industry. And if you search, Control F, you search the word electric just once. If you search hydrogen, it's like 20 times. So you ask me about the future. The future is very hard to predict, but there are trends.
So what's your take then? So your take is that the U.S. will get EVs and it's inevitable, or is it just are we?
It is, but at the exception of Tesla, it looks like the legacy guys are doing it reluctantly. Just if you look at the lobbying and Toyota USA is almost a US company, but before Biden arrives, they were saying, "Oh, never going to work," blah blah blah. And then you've got regularly in the Pravda. How do you call the Pravda? Yeah, the Wall Street Journal. Anti-environmental Pravda, the oil Pravda. Regularly popping articles like EV doesn't work. EV. What about I can't run 1,000 miles without having to refuel in 20 minutes. You can feel that the GM and the Ford and would love that nothing change. Whereas in Europe, okay, the Germans are really have a problem. The German economic miracle was based on two legs. Number one, cheap Russian gas, and number two, selling petrol vehicles. So they're struggling. But yeah, in the US, at the end of the day, consumer is the same. They want the best product, the cheapest, the most.
But that's the U.S., right? We see change, right? I mean, if you look at telecom, if you look at other industries where they've pivoted, if you looked at the old telecom models, they used to have these big R box and old telephones, and IP came along, and these newcomers came in and disrupted. Now the old guys are still around; they reinvented themselves, but isn't that happening with the Teslas, with the Polesters, with all these EVs coming in? Isn't it just its early innings? When you read the articles that EVs are not going well in the US, well, the growth is still rapid growth. It's just not exponentially rapid growth. It's a slower slope, right? It's still growing.
I mean, we can make the parallel, but I think it's interesting, but you just can't apply the telecom speed to the car.
Jeff, an opinion?
Oh, I gave my EV take. I think, yes, there's definitely fleet mechanics. So we have to be careful about percentage of US light duty vehicle fleet versus new vehicle sales. New vehicle sales percentage can grow much faster. And if the average vehicle life in the US is 10 to 15 years, there's just a fleet turnover effect that's going to take a lot of time. So I think we're absolutely talking about a multi-decade trend here. And but that's something that is going to continue to grow.
What about Cybertruck? Hype? Excited? Everybody, what's your opinion of
I've
Cybertruck?
seen it in New York when I was there at Thanksgiving, and it's wow. Okay, it's very non-European. Uh, I have a car here, which I don't really use in the center of London, and it's a relatively big car. Now, when I have the same car in the US, it looks like a mini. So the criteria are not the same. So I don't know. Look, I'm sure a lot of very intelligent people done a lot of research around it, and plus you might get surprised. Tastes change.
Fact check note here: the Cybertruck is a foot shorter than the standard Ford F-150.
Yeah, but
So it,
there's no Ford F-150 in Europe. There's none. Yeah, I
yeah,
mean the biggest car you're gonna have is probably a Range Rover or SUV.
Another thing in the energy podcasts and when we're talking or in our both in our day jobs as well is carbon markets.
Ah,
So, we a lot of this renewal, right? We're about trying to reduce greenhouse gases and carbons. What about carbon markets? What do you think? Are they priced high enough? Do they work? What's your thoughts?
I was one of the creators of the European carbon market way back when, 25 years ago. I advised the EU Commission. I was at PwC at the time. One of the 20 guys who wrote the first greenhouse gas protocol. And of course, everybody used now scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. And I remember very clearly those concepts. Anyway, so, well, first of all, the European carbon market was created at the same time we were liberalizing energy. So what we were creating the carbon market in the same dynamics as we were, creating the energy markets. But look, the whole idea was at the time gas was expensive, coal was super cheap, nuclear was, well, you never know what's the price of nuclear. But the whole idea was to give a bit of a competitive advantage for gas and nuclear against coal. That's the premise. Now, of course, there were other sectors like steel, cement, and so on. But guess what? They gave them the allowances for free. Does the carbon market create some uh, competitive advantage or disadvantage? It's very hard to say. It's also, does it increase the price of power or not? And even the renewables were not in the carbon market; they were dealt with subsidies. But the only positive aspect I see is that there's a price. There's a price, there's liquidity. Every day you can arrive, you can buy too much carbon you have or not. But that's a regulatory market. I think it's good to have a carbon price. Does it work? Yes, let's say it works.
So you think it works in the current pricing? So that I think pricing needs to go up to make it work better, does it not? To really have an impact on total carbon? Because right now it's not even getting on most people's radar. It's the pricing's still pretty low. It's just a cost of doing business.
It's very difficult because if on the top of that you have the price of power, which in Europe has been pretty much flat for 10 years, and then it went crazy 18 months ago. Weird things like okay, half of the European aluminum smelter closed. Okay, the price of power was too high. In fact, they closed because they had contracts and decided not to produce aluminum and resell their contracts. And 50 fertilizers plant in Europe have closed because the price. Unfortunately, a lot of the polluting activities are high volume, low margin, and the price of energy is super important in them. And look, you have gas at $3 per MMBTU. Europe, best case, we're gonna have 10, if not more. I
But
mean, no wonder all those activities, high volume, low margin, high energy content are going to move to Texas. I mean,
yeah, but that's what I guess I'm wondering. So, as we were getting ready for this call, we were talking a little bit about the regional and the global impact of all this and going into the regions. And so if an aluminum manufacturer shuts down in the EU,
mm,
they simply move somewhere else. So let's
mm,
say it's made somewhere where it's easier to make it, and then it's
mm,
imported in. It
mm.
doesn't cut greenhouse gases. The policy's not working then.
No, but the question is, where is it going? And if they build a beautiful new smelter in Quebec, and you're going to get a brand new aluminium with coming from hydro. And guess what? I mean, the price of aluminum is down pretty much uh, in a straight line. I mean, nobody's making a lot of money producing your aluminium, so it makes sense from a capitalistic point of view that those activities are located where it makes the most sense, and but provided we can move the stuff on the sea. Now, if they are produced out of China with coal or out of the Gulf with gas, that's where you've got the mechanism, the carbon, where they'll pay the carbon on the way in.
Laurent, it's amazing to have your perspective on European compliance markets. And this is a big difference from we don't have a compliance market. We have really the voluntary market. And the rest, as you said, is done through RECs and state level renewable portfolio standards, or it's done through the tax code.
Mhm.
So I think there's an example there of how the compliance markets can work. I have serious concerns about the voluntary market, or
Ah.
pinning our hopes and dreams on the voluntary market. And I'm concerned by the trends in the voluntary market. The way people are trying to fix this is to go to higher quality, higher durability, higher permanence. And my take in general about carbon markets is that if we've got a carbon market that's paying $2,000 a ton with zero co-benefits, that's hard for me to get behind. So I'm pretty negative on the voluntary carbon market as I see it currently. I don't have a more detailed, or can't come to the level of informed opinion that you have on the compliance markets in Europe. I wish we had something similar. I don't think that's happening anytime soon.
Never. It takes too much energy, and let's not forget the most of the European industry was in favor of the carbon market. So really, it helped push the whole system. In 3 years, it was done.
I want to switch gears a little bit here. I want to do a speed round with the three of us
Yeah.
and go over just a bunch of things that are happening and just 1 or 2 word answers. I want to start by saying COP. Quick feedback, short answer. Laurent, what do you think?
No, it's good that people meet. No, it's good that people talk. It's good that for 2 weeks per year, it's on the radar of politicians, and now you've got the big CEO coming in. So yeah, I mean it's a great talking shop.
All right. So air conditioned tents in the desert, Jeff. What do you think?
I'm pro cop. I'm definitely pro cop. I think we got a really encouraging outcome, not maybe where everybody wants to be, but I think it was a big step and is appropriately hyped.
I definitely like it. I think it may be a little overhyped for the results, but if you don't talk, you don't get anywhere.
Oh, fun. Nuclear small modular reactors.
I personally love them. I know Laurent and I've talked about this in the past. We've had differences of opinion. I think that there are a lot to be said in the future. I think they're going to be a wave of the future. There's a lot of investment going that way, and I think they'll become a reality, and policy will change.
I
Do
hope
you think appropriately hyped?
Underhyped.
Underhyped. Oh.
I hope you have invested in new scale. There's Oklo coming soon. That's gonna be a beauty. Yeah. No. I mean nuclear work. Nuclear work if it's big.
I want to believe there's lots of reasons why I want, and it's really hard to build the large scale nuclear in the US, but I do think unfortunately it's overhyped. All right, Laurent, your turn.
Okay, so interconnectors, transmission.
My take is that's been a gate for in the U.S. getting interconnection. If you're going to get that is a problem, and it's not anywhere close to being solved at in the U.S.
I agree. I mean, it needs to be hyped. It needs to be hyped more. It's a big problem. Every conference, every year for the next 15 years, we're still going to be talking about the challenges of transmission and interconnection. I don't think that's going away anytime soon. I wish that there was a better, faster solution out there, but I don't see any on the horizon.
Okay, I'm super bullish, and I'm gonna do it slowly because I'm contrarian. Look, most of the new capacity is gonna come from intermittent resources. It's gonna be wind and solar. Most of the new capacity, and we all believe that electrification of transportation, heating will increase power consumption. So you have a problem which is space and time. Okay, time is batteries, but can be pump hydro, and space is interconnections. And I do believe that especially east-west interconnection are very important.
Because we could go on between us all day long. I've had a lot of fun. I think we've been all over the place, which is one of Laurent's comments about our podcast. He never can quite figure out what it is we do. I think he's told me at one point, because he's not exactly sure where we're going to go from week to week. So why would this episode be any different than Insider's Guide to Energy?
No, look, guys, you're doing a great job. And look, it's great to have all this entrepreneurship initiative, people trying stuff, and not everything is going to work. And a lot of money has been squandered on stupid things and lobby. You talk about DAC, and a lot of things are not going to work. But it's good to see, that old generation pushing in the same direction. So, whatever the mistake, whatever the scams, overall, I enjoyed the travel.
We're certainly not running out of topics, which is exciting for us. And Laurent, I appreciate the chance to share the conversation with you. You bring a really different perspective than a lot of the folks that we talk to, and not shy about opinions. I feel like you're the Jigger Shah of Europe in terms of your forceful opinions and takes, which is really exciting and wonderful to have you in conversation. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Cheers.
For our audience, we hope you've enjoyed this episode. It's been fun working with Laurent and Redefining Energy, and we'll talk to you again next time on the Insider's Guide to Energy.